Hey, folks, it's that time again. It's time for another session of Get to Know Dynatrace. I'm your host, David Jones. Everyone calls me Jonesy, so feel free. One of the best things about the Get to Know Dynatrace sessions is your participation. So we encourage you as we get into the demo today to ask questions. We'll do our best to answer those questions. We may not be able to answer everything at the spur of the moment. We might have to dig around to get those answers for you, but it's the participation. It's you asking those questions which makes Get to Know Dynatrace so fun and so informative. Now, as always with Get to Know Dynatrace, we always start off with a couple of opening segments. And so this week, let's get started with our presentation here. We always start with what's new. And I always tell everyone that if you want to find out what's new here at Dynatrace, you go to www.dynatrace.com/news/blog. Our blog site, this is where we publish all of our information about what's new here at Dynatrace. You have to come to this site at least once a month, if not twice a month, if not more times, like once a week, maybe multiple times during the week, because this content is constantly being updated. And as you know, or actually you may not know, the Dynatrace platform, our SaaS platform, is updated with a new release every 2 weeks. If you're using Dynatrace in a on-premise capacity, what we call our managed deployments, it gets updated every month. So there's always going to be constant updates to our release notes to tell you about the new capabilities, new functionality that's been released into the Dynatrace platform. Now, the blog site doesn't just contain the release notes. It also has information about a wide variety of subjects that Dynatrace touches. And that could be anything, like, for example, here, how observability, application security, and AI enhance DevOps and platform engineering maturity. And this article is by Jacob Hanley. You can see here there's also an article here about enabling full observability for Linux on IBM Z mainframe. And now this capability also includes logs. The mainframe piece is actually, I'm sort of hitting you with a little bit of a teaser here. We're going to be talking a little bit more about how Dynatrace can give complete end-to-end visibility all the way from the user doing something on a device, being able to trace and track that all the way through an application stack back to the mainframe. Shannon today is going to be doing a demo of that. Also, some of the other articles I'll point out here is, for example, there's an article over here, Protecting Critical Infrastructure and Services, and how to ensure efficient and accurate information delivery this election year. And this article is by my good friend, Willie Hicks. I can't say enough good things about Willie. Shout out to Willie. Hey, man, thanks for creating that content. He is essentially our CTO for all things federal when it comes to Dynatrace. And I just can't say enough good things about him. And I always enjoy the content that he creates. So, folks, as I said, if you want to find out what's new here at Dynatrace, go to www.dynatrace.com/news/blog. So let's move on to the next segment. The next segment is Did You Know? Now, today's segment of Did You Know kind of got inspired because this morning I was up in Toronto at a Red Hat Ansible Automates event, and I was a panelist on stage there. And so I thought it would be appropriate. Did you know that Dynatrace can help drive self-healing through Ansible? And so we had a great morning, with our folks and our partners at Red Hat. Following the panel, we actually had one of our customers actually went on stage, Rohan, and he literally walked through a real-world example of how they use Dynatrace and they combine it with Ansible to drive self-healing scenarios. And some of these scenarios, you could imagine them could be anything from being able to detect a scenario where maybe a disk is filling up. And what you want to do is, rather than let that disk fill up and then cause a problem for an application, which then generates a problem card, which then generates a alert that goes off into something like your PagerDuty or ServiceNow. So you now have a ticket. Rather than go through that whole chain of events, if Dynatrace observes it, why not have Dynatrace actually kick off an Ansible playbook that could then potentially resize that disk and see, in that particular case, if it actually prevents that issue from happening in the first place. And so there's all sorts of different examples of how Dynatrace's AI-driven observability can be used in combination with platforms like Ansible to help drive these different self-healing scenarios. We have documentation on our website about it, so please feel free to check that out. We've got actual documentation to explain exactly how you set up, for example, Ansible Tower to work with Dynatrace. So there's all sorts of different examples, including some of the new exciting capabilities that we announced earlier this year, which is our own workflows. And so now what you can do is you can actually use a Dynatrace workflow and chain it together with an Ansible workflow. So the concept of workflow chaining in this case is something that you can use to help drive that automated self-healing type scenario. So, folks, that's I wanted, I thought it was timely because I had this opportunity to speak at the Red Hat show this morning. I thought it would be something that maybe some people didn't know or weren't aware of. Now, let's get to the best part of Get to Know Dynatrace. This is the best part of Get to Know Dynatrace. It's demo time. And this week, we have someone returning to Get to Know Dynatrace. We've had them on in the past, and they did such a great job that we invited them back. So today's guest solution engineer, Shannon Bryant. So hey, Shannon, how's it going? I'm gonna stop sharing right now, and we're gonna let you get set up. How you doing?
Awesome, doing great, Jonesy. Can everybody just ping in the chat and tell me where you're dialing in from? I am currently in Tennessee and Chattanooga visiting some friends, so hanging out in the South today. And excited to share, basically mobile to mainframe, which is what Jonesy alluded to previously with you guys today. And Carrie, real quick, is my screen showing for everybody to see?
There we go.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, so really excited to demo for y'all today. I've been having a lot of conversations with customers recently of like, we have stuff everywhere, right? We have stuff on-prem, we have multi-cloud, we kind of have this varied architecture, right? And that's something that Dynatrace does really well, right? With our one agent technology. You guys have heard us talk about it before in getting to know Dynatrace, but it really is a unique feature for Dynatrace specifically in the industry. And one thing that we do tackle is mainframe, if you can believe it or not. So a lot of banks work with us to, kind of get that full end-to-end connection when users are looking, at transacting on their mobile apps. So we can really tie everything together end to end there. Jonesy, anything else I'm missing just from teeing us up?
No, I think you're doing great, Shannon. I will throw this out, and Dynatrace. To be fair, sometimes, and that's sorry. To be fair,
Yeah.
sometimes Dynatrace, we throw out a lot of jargon, and people may know exactly what we're talking about. So when we talk about a one agent, what do we really mean by that, Shannon?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So a lot of other monitoring tools or observability tools will have multiple agents or binaries that will run on your machines, right? To pick up, let's say it's different types of languages, different types of technologies, right? So the one agent is unique in its name, that it's just one agent to kind of rule them all, right? So our one agent can handle everything from, front end to multi-cloud Lambda. It's just the same agent instrumented everywhere rather than having multiple agents to do different things. So I don't know if that helps provide clarity, Jonesy, but it's what
Oh,
makes us unique.
Shannon, that's perfect. That's perfect because we call it the one agent, but you're exactly right. Over the years, as we've seen in the APM and observability space, there's all sorts of different technologies that are out there that can be deployed to generate telemetry. Here at Dynatrace, what we've done, as Shannon's described, is we've created a single package that you can install onto a host, and it goes through and will auto discover what technologies are running on that host. And if you've got Java, Node.js, Nginx, .NET, Golang, it's going to automatically instrument those technologies for you. So you don't have to do that work, that heavy lifting. Over the years, I've seen so many APM projects flounder because it's just been so difficult to instrument the technologies that needed to be monitored. And what Shannon described solves for that. It's what we call the one agent. Great job, Shannon, explaining that. Really appreciate that. Sorry for
No,
interrupting your flow. Keep going.
no, this is Jonesy. I love making this conversational. I'm like, come on, let's keep having a conversation about this. But yeah, our one agent again is unique compared to other competitors in the market. And then, the other thing is out of the box, we're kind of getting, because we're installed at the host level, right? We can see everything that's running at the host level all the way up to if there's any front end apps interacting with that. So the one agent really gives us our Smartscape topology, which is our end-to-end view of what's happening within your environment. So a lot of times when we're working with clients, we do, like, let's say a mass deploy of one agents, and the Smartscape lights up right away. And if you think about that just from a human perspective, right? There's a lot of tribal knowledge and knowing how everything's connected from your app layer down to your processes, and you don't need to know any of that, right? Davis AI, Smartscape, and the one agent technology takes care of that for you. So
Okay,
that's just kind of something that's unique.
Shannon, we just did it again. We just hit people with a whole bunch of jargon, and we
Sorry, I know.
we used the term smartscape. What do
Mhm.
we mean by smartscape? What is it that we're looking at on the screen right now?
Yeah, yeah. So again, when we install the one agent at the host level, that one agent is running and getting all the processes and services and front end applications that are hosted there, right? And we're connecting all the dots using that one agent. So it's really an end-to-end view of everything that's in your environment at each level, both vertically and horizontally. So I don't know, Jonesy, again, I don't know if that's too much jargon, but
No. Like you like that really explains what this smartscape is. It's just that it's a map, it's a view, it's a topology. It's the way I like to describe it is it's how our Davis AI views the world. This is for the causal AI piece. This is the map, the model that gets automatically generated. So you don't have to configure this. This just happens. All you do is that those one agents Shannon's talking about, go ahead and deploy them. If once you deploy them and Dynatrace starts collecting that telemetry, it automatically builds out this topology map. And it
yep,
does it in near
exactly.
real time, which is absolutely fabulous. So thanks for taking some time to explain that, Shannon.
Exactly. So yeah, Jonesy and I are just going back and forth, kind of filling out the picture here. But once we're installed and we have this end-to-end picture, again, totally out of the box, and customers don't believe us, I'm like, call us and do an evaluation, then you'll believe us. We basically start baselining what's going on in this environment. So for these services here, right? Let's say you have a service that's dealing with transactions, right? Like you have somebody who's trying to move money from account A to account B. And those transactions normally always succeed, right? Let's say that we start getting failures at that service level. Well, what do we do out of the box? We flag that as what we call a problem or an error. So basically, what the other thing we're doing is anomaly detection at each one of these levels to determine, what's considered normal service and what's considered a problem, right? And so again, that's just something that's out of the box with one agent, Smartscape Davis AI, doing that for you. Jonesy, I don't know if you want to add any color to
Nope.
problems
No,
or anomaly detection.
you're doing great. Like typically, when we talk about the problems, that's kind of like the raison d'etre for Dynatrace. Like that's the reason that we exist, is that we have this AI engine that is looking for performance bottlenecks, like when things are slowing down. It's looking for errors, it's looking for exceptions. The way I like to describe it is we have a very practical AI. Doesn't require any sort of training, doesn't require you to put any thought into it. You just go ahead and deploy the one agent. it automatically builds out this map for the entities on this map. It just automatically starts baselining the telemetry coming off of these entities. And if there is one of those issues that I mentioned, like a performance bottleneck or errors or exceptions, it bubbles those up into a problem. And then, Shannon, where did you want to go next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we can either take it to a problem, which I know probably a lot of people have seen before, or we can take a look at how we help on the front end RUM side. So, so we like to always tee it up with kind of our secret sauce or what makes us unique in the marketplace. But I kind of want to take it to the mobile side, right? So with that same one agent, we actually inject JavaScript automatically into your front end applications, and that gives us a good idea of what's happening, user experience for those apps. So we track user sessions out of the box with user actions, and then we kind of look at, what actions are those users taking, where are those users taking those actions, and then we tie in all of that front end stuff into the back end tracing, which you guys have definitely seen on a previous Getting to Know Dynatrace. So Jonesy, I want to keep it on front end if that's okay.
Absolutely, it's your demo.
All right. Whenever you have an app that's spinning up here, right? I'm going to go back to the Smartscape. We have two web apps, both for a travel application. One's a web and one's a mobile that are being serviced, from the environment, right? And so if I look on this page, all of this data is kind of accumulated over time. And what we're doing in each one of these little things is we're looking at user experience, individual web requests, crashes and errors, and then how is this web app actually linking into the back end? So I'm going to pause right here and see if anybody has any questions related to RUM or digital experience off the bat.
Let's see. I'm not seeing any questions yet. I am seeing like some shout outs. Hey, Shannon, woohoo! From
Oh, that's so funny.
topology. There we go. Right on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So no questions means I get to get into the fun part, which is how do we actually link into mainframe, right?
No. Come on back. Come on. No.
Go back. All right, I'm going back.
Go
I'm
back.
going
Let's go
back.
back. Oh, how do you add a request attribute to a RUM front end? Oh, now there's an interesting question right there.
That's a really good question. So basically, we pick up the request attributes natively, but then you can basically tag them as request attributes within Dynatrace to kind of filter the UI based on those attributes. So Jonesy, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't know if you have one off the top of your head.
Yeah, so if you think about the way that a web page works, right? What's happening is there are web requests that are going back to a server. As part of those web requests, what you can do is you can pull out components of it. You could pull out information from the header, right? You could pull out information from the actual URL. Now, a request attribute is a very specific piece of functionality inside of Dynatrace, where normally you can pull it out of the, like as I was saying, a web request. You could pull it out from Java parameters that are being passed back and forth as well. So the idea with a web request is that you are going to set up a rule that's going to look at the request, and we're going to pull out some information. Now, here's actually a really interesting piece of information that's related to this. Specifically, if I was trying to pull out a request attribute from the front end, using, from the RUM front end, there's other mechanisms that are available to you now. There's this thing that we call business events. And with business events, it's essentially a feature of the one agent. You can literally just turn it on. And what this then allows you to do is not just look at, say, things like, the makeup of the actual request itself or the header value. You can actually start pulling out specifically information from the payload that's being delivered back and forth. And these business events, so you could use them in all sorts of different scenarios. You could use them to say, hey, I want to pull out my, these are my gold customers compared to my silver class customers. or you could use it to pull out the cart value that's actually being transacted on. So there's all sorts of different uses of web requests, and now with these new business events, there's all sorts of different use cases for those as well. That was a fabulous question. Thanks, Performacology, for asking that. Okay, do we have any other questions?
I believe we have one other about the performance degradation of the application for JavaScript, which I will say is minimal, right? Jonesy, I'm not sure what the advertised uh, performance degradation is, but just
Oh,
it's
it's
not
it's it's
it's
it's
not
typically going to be in milliseconds. Like it's
right.
first off, nothing comes for free when it comes to web performance. Like that's just a fact. Okay. And if somebody says that there's not going to be an impact, they're trying to sell you something. Like they're that is not the case. So even our rum injection, there will be a slight performance impact. It's the way these technologies work. However, what happens is in most cases, most of the loading of the libraries and everything like that is happening asynchronously, right? All of the processing that is occurring asynchronously. But you can always expect that there will be at least some upfront, and it would be in the milliseconds kind of range, performance impact. Most users, it is completely imperceptible. Like they will not be able to know that things are slowing down because that rum instrumentation is turned on. But that's a great question, and yeah, you can't get something for nothing, and there's always going to be a performance impact, but we just make sure that it's really 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 minimal.
Definitely. No, that was a great response, Jonesy. And I agree. I've done lots of RUM implementations now, and they're all really interesting, tying in some of these biz events, request attributes, like kind of making all this business data available on the front end. But yeah, I haven't seen like a huge performance impact with anybody that I've worked with so far. So
Yeah,
it's good.
and the fact of the matter is, if you're following if anyone's following the comments here, the performacology, you kind of nailed it. E- you know enabling run on the front end, there will be additional traffic that's going to be generated because that telemetry, first off, the actual instrumentation has to be pulled into the page. Then the telemetry that's coming off of that has to be sent back. This is what we typically would call like a beacon, where we're actually sending that data back, and it is going to have an impact in terms of the number of web requests and the amount of data that's being passed back and forth. So this is a great. Oh, more.
But the yeah, I was gonna say, but the juice is definitely worth the squeeze,
Oh, 100%.
especially if you have like a very mobile or web heavy business, right? Like e-commerce, banking, really like every industry now. You order stuff online, right? And your user experience is paramount to being able to drive revenue, right? So I think that again, the juice is always worth the squeeze when it comes to front end monitoring.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And it's funny because this is just the way these technologies work. All anyone has to do is go look at any page for that matter, and just go into, like, if you're using Google, go into the developer tools and turn on the network view, and then refresh the page and look at all of the different components that are being loaded for that page. In this case, the instrumentation we're talking about is just one of them.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
and that last comment that threw up there, that got thrown up there, is exactly right. There is almost always going to be more value to the business than the cost of any kind of overhead that comes from this. These are great
Definitely.
questions.
Definitely. Hey, Performacology, I got you on some USQL in a second, so hang tight. Um, but just want to continue on kind of what comes out of the box, right? So once we've done our injection with the one agent, again, you haven't done anything, right? We start gathering all of this information about your app, right? So you can see how are your users, like what paths are they using here, right? You can analyze performance. Where are they actually hitting my application? And then again, we give it this AppDex rating, which tells you how your app is performing over time. And you can even go into some of these performance metrics here for these actions and dive into like, we're kind of always in this period of like we have limited resources, right? So where can we get the most bang for our buck? So having a tool like this actually helps you decipher, like, okay, users are hitting this page a lot and we're seeing failures here. That's probably causing a bad user experience. You can kind of allocate your resources smartly for how you want to, resolve issues as they come up. So just want to highlight that as a use here. Um, any questions before I move on to service flow?
No, you've been dying to get into service flow.
Yes,
Service
I
flow.
know. I
Service flow.
love.
Service flow.
Okay, service flow. Yes. Okay, so the service flow is just like it's so cool. And you can really see like everything and how it's interacting in a graphical sense. And for me, this is mind blowing. I was previously a software engineer, and a lot of what we had was tribal, right? So I had to know that my web app was hitting, let's say this is an F5 or a proxy or something like that, right? You had to know which services it was hitting downstream. I don't have to know anything. It's just how Dynatrace works, which I love to say. But you can see here this mobile app is interacting with this web service, which is interacting with this easy travel service, how it's talking to each one of these other downstream services. And then again, we can even get into mainframe, right? Which is insane. So right off the bat, I can see this easy travel app, how we're flowing through the different backend services. And then on this side, seeing how we're hitting this IBM mainframe, right? So I'm just going to pause here. This is super cool. Any other mainframe gurus on this call?
You have any questions coming up from the mainframe crowd?
I'm going to take it as no. Too bad Stoge isn't on this call. He would
So
be so
you know,
happy.
it's funny because as much as we work with modern technologies and support everything, the latest and greatest on the Kubernetes side, um there's Golang, like just these, all these things that are just the latest and greatest. There's so many organizations that have no choice, but they still rely on their mainframes, and it's still a critical component of their overall, business strategy. And Shannon, basically what you showed was this service flow is literally me sitting on my couch and I've got my banking app open. Maybe I've got a baseball game in the background or something like that. But me sitting on the couch and I'm in this banking app and I'm going to go transfer some funds or go do something. And there's a request that's going from my phone over the wire all the way back to a set of servers at that bank that is then going off into a set of back-end servers that's hitting some messaging queues that's then eventually making its way back to a mainframe. And blows my mind, right? Like here I am just trying to do something on my bank, and yeah, it's absolutely going back and generating a request, that's happening on the mainframe. And I have to say, from my experience working with a lot of financial institutions, they absolutely love this service flow map because, and when you combine that with our view of the basically the spans and traces, they get to see scenarios where maybe an application is in fact actually spamming the mainframe, and this happens all the time. So Shannon, you're a developer, and as well as everyone that developers, like everyone else, were pressed for time. And in a perfect world, we'd like to think that we 100% always create and generate perfect code. Sometimes we just take a shortcut or we do something and not think about the downstream implications of that. So maybe I make a request off to the mainframe for a piece of information. And rather than storing that piece of information and persisting it, what happens is every time that I need that information, I'm going to make that request back to the database. So now that single transaction that I do on my phone when I hit submit, it might go back and actually hit that mainframe for the exact same piece of information 5, 10, 50, 100 times during the exact same transaction. And that's using up MIPS, that's using up compute on the mainframe side, that's costing the bank. And so when we work with banks, they love it when we can sit there and show them, hey, this particular request is just spamming the mainframe, and here's an area that you can optimize things. So it absolutely helps save money on these regards. I love that you showed us this complete end-to-end example back to the mainframe, Shannon.
Ah, there's Stoge, by the way.
Yeah, there he is. There
There
he
he
is.
is. No, no, but seriously, Dynatrace, to your point, Jonesy, right? Like this is why this is so powerful, is because, we're kind of bridging the gap of people, what they know, and technology, right? No matter what it is, we help stitch it together end to end. I think it's super powerful. I love what we do at Dynatrace. It's such a cool product, and we love helping our customers, kind of realize how everything's connected and be able to make performance improvements on that. So, anyways, just love it. Who doesn't love Dynatrace? Um, but I want to take it. So Jonesy kind of alluded to seeing tracing, right? So obviously we're looking at the service flow. I want to take a look at some individual transactions that are happening here as well, just so you guys can really see the amount of detail that we can capture on this tracing from the front end all the way down to the mainframe. So if you look here, right, so here's our booking on the mobile site, right? They're trying to book a trip or they're trying to move funds, whatever it is. You can see how we're flowing through here. We even got a little hotel. You can see we're doing some database transactions. I'm also getting a couple failures and exceptions, right? So if I click on failure here, I can log in and see immediately that I'm getting some sort of SQL exception. And that's, causing probably some issues with this particular trace. But right off the bat, I mean, I just want to highlight this. This is so cool. Like, again, we're seeing mobile quite literally to the mainframe, which is insane. Uh, any questions here? I'm like, this is just mind blowing to me.
You know what, Shannon? While we're waiting for the questions, go back to the service flow where you were,
Yeah.
and perhaps what we can do is we can show somebody. We can show an example of the service flow map is like that top down view. This is where I'm
Mhm.
going from that entry point
Yeah.
all the way back. But let's start with the view from the other end. Let's go all the way
Oh.
back to the mainframe and perhaps show people that what we can do with a backtrace.
Ooh, okay. So you want to do a backtrace, right?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's do a service backtrace. So, okay, so the trace that we were looking at before, we can basically take a look at the reverse, right? So at any point in that service flow, and you can kind of see a small visual representation up here, I can go back. I can say, all right, I'm hitting this ETO2, I'm hitting this MQ, and then it's going upstream through these services to the mobile app. So you can almost go reverse, right? So if you have no idea where you are, you're like, let's take a look at let's take a look at how this interacts upstream, which is just super cool, right? Um,
So it's fascinating because it shows that not only can we do that service flow view, which is that top down, hey, I'm a user and I just pressed a button in my app. What's everything that's happening down below? A developer can also now go and look at all of the requests that are happening here on the back end and say, how did we get to this request being generated? What was happening all the way upstream? you know, and that backtracing allows us to do that. Being able to navigate up and through and back and forth within these traces is just such a powerful tool. And we hear this all the time when people get exposed to how Dynatrace works and allows you to see these things. At that point, typically people are hooked and they're like, nope, you're never taking this away. I need this now because I just get that up, down, back, forth view of these transactions.
well,
Shannon,
and then
what
the
else
other
can you
thing
show us?
too, Jonesy, is like,
Mhm.
when you're thinking about being a developer, right? And not quite understanding like what happens after maybe this booking service. Once, since this is out of the box and you can go in and trace end to end, forwards, backwards, whatever, it kind of helps you make more informed coding decisions as well
Yes.
as to what you're going to do. So to your point, I just wanted to highlight that as well.
No, for sure, for sure.
Cool. Jonesy, where are we going to take me? You're going to take me somewhere else.
Do you know what? How about we actually go back to let's actually look at one of these mainframe services in the new unified services view.
Oh, I'm
So
not
what we
sure.
want to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
is let's go ahead and click on one of these guys. And let's go to the ellipsis over on the right-hand side.
There you go.
Yeah, we could go back into the service flow if we want. Actually, from that view, sorry if you went back, I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. Let me go back.
No, go back because click on that again. So you're highlighting that service there.
Hmm.
And if you scroll down over on the left-hand side where it's blue, you can actually click on it.
Here.
No, to the left, all the way to your left there. Yeah,
There we
go ahead.
go.
Here we go. And this should just take us a moment. So there is effectively a new view for these services. So actually, if you go one more up into the IBM Q listener, I believe.
That's where I
And
am now.
yeah,
No.
just go up right above that into the cookie bar or the breadcrumb trail. You right on the other left-hand side of the details.
Ah,
That's
yes.
okay. So this is the classic view. So there's actually a new view for services,
I just
and
turned it
that's
on.
it right there. Yeah.
Why not? Right.
Right. So in this case, this just happens to be a queue listener. So it's just getting the stuff. But what's great about this is in that particular view, you had all sorts of different things that were showing. So if there are SLOs associated, if there's problems that are being detected, if there's specific owners, all of that information now is being shown here.
Yeah, versus the old view, which is just like kind of linking, your tracing and stuff like that, right? So we're kind of getting more of the high level metrics as well, Jonesy, which is what you're trying to call out.
Yeah,
And then also the
exactly.
tracing tied in, which is really nice.
Yeah, all the way down to even the related logs, right? And that's the best thing about this is that
Yes.
everything's in one view. The traces, the logs, the events, they're all coming from the exact same view. So I'm
Yes.
not flipping back and forth or doing anything really unnatural trying to figure out what's going on. So
Yeah,
hey,
I
Shannon,
definitely agree.
yeah, we've got 20 minutes left. What else do you have for us?
Yes. Okay. So I've got a couple more things. One is I wanted to get into session replay and kind of looking at an individual user session for the front end. And then I want to bring in our special guest, Davis, to do some fun query stuff for us. So those are the next two things we're going to cover.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. So if you remember from our mobile application, right, there's all those user sessions that are tied to that mobile app, right? I happen to be looking at user sessions that are tied to a problem, right? So we tie them to not only be able to query any user session on any app, you can query it at the app level or on a specific problem if it's tied to it as well. So out of the box, you can see here, we're giving it a user experience score. We talked about that Apdex rating. How long is it taking? Different user interactions, conversions, which Jonesy kind of alluded to this earlier with key requests. This is like something that would be, did this person buy? Yes or no? Or could be some other, like, what does it mean for a conversion goal? And then is this person experiencing any errors and annoyances? So we're rolling this all up for you to see at this level. And then, we you can go in and look at the individual sessions. So within each session, we kind of have a lot of information. Again, this is out of the box. Once you install that one agent and do that RUM injection, we're getting information about who that user is. You can obscure that if you want. We're getting information about where that interaction took place, which app it was hitting. And then we're also pulling in all these really cool session properties, which can be useful when it comes to looking at revenue. So how much revenue you could have lost or how much revenue you did make on these user sessions, right? So we can roll that up and make it easy for you to surface in Dynatrace as well. So I'm going to pause here real quick. Any questions on user sessions? I know we had one about USQL. I will follow up on that one, performacology.
No questions? Doesn't
Hey,
look that way. Keep going, Shannon.
all right. So some of our other competitors don't necessarily have session replay. So it's something that I want to highlight, right? We don't care if this is a web app. We don't care if this is a mobile app. We are going to capture this interaction, and be able to let you play it back, which this can be really useful when it comes to troubleshooting issues, right? So if you're a developer and you're like, oh, okay, I'm looking at all these stack traces and I have no idea where it's going wrong, right? Being able to see it sometimes makes it a little easier to figure out what's going on. This can also be useful for a support person as well, so that when they're looking at how to reproduce this issue, they can do so, um, for themselves. But you'll also notice at the top, there's little bubbles here. And these bubbles correspond to different interactions that are happening within the system. Obviously, red is bad. So we've had our first error here, which is taking a while for that home page to load. Not off to a good start, easy travel. And then if we skip ahead, you'll see each one of these user interactions taking place here, right? This person's looking to take a trip to Paris. They're going in and they're saying, oh, it's just me. I want to go by myself. I'm actually taking my grandmother this summer. So, oh, they changed it to two. I'm trying to log in so I can book my trip. I'm like, woohoo, let me give Easy Travel $1,200, right? Let me get that, give them my cash, my hard-earned cash. And they're going in and they're entering their credit card information, which if you notice here is obscured. We're not capturing any sensitive data. And then you can see this error here, right? So the user's trying to pay you for this the trip to Paris, which I'm taking my grandma on this summer. She's turning 90, and they're getting this error message, right? This is just a really bad user experience. And so, we're kind of showing that here and then tying in the tracing as well. And then finishing up this user session, you can see that they're trying to figure out what's going on. Where's my ticket? Did I actually buy this trip? And then if we pause here, you can see that that user is now clicking this button a bunch of times, and we call that a usability issue called a rage click. Uh, so I just wanted to show you a session replay, right? So end to end, you can see where the user's having issues, see the whole interaction back to back, and then we even break it down for you below into individual user actions. So this is just really cool out of the box functionality. I think I have some questions as
Yep,
well.
there was a question that popped up there.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, Michael. So can session replay gray out certain areas of an agent screen? Yes. Yes, Michael. And I'm going to explain this to you real quick. So you notice that the credit card or logging in, we don't capture that information at all. And basically, you can set up additional data masking as well to not even capture the username. And none of that information even hits our servers. Like we don't even capture it, right? So when it comes to data privacy and security, we are, very serious on that, um, and we will not even capture that information to store in our servers. So if that
So
answers your
just to,
question.
just it's a great question. Just to add to Shannon's response. So, um, like Shannon was saying, certain types of information, like, for if I'm filling out information within a form, entering credit card information, that stuff you're never going to see. Like that's just simply not captured. There's even rules because there could be a scenario where some content that's being displayed on the screen could be potentially sensitive. So you could imagine a scenario where you know you're looking at a customer history information and there's a whole bunch of information about that particular customer, or even in a healthcare type scenario. What you can do is you can actually go in and create a set of rules that are based upon the way that that page is formatted. So you could be very, very specific and say, do not show anything, mask a region of the page that is contained within a certain div or span, or for that matter, within a certain CSS rule. So you can use, if you want, you could use the different sort of, HTML components, or you could be using some of the CSS components that basically represent the formatting of a particular region of the screen, and use that as the rule that you say anything with that within that CSS boundary, mask that, don't show that, don't capture that. It's a great question. And yeah, Dynatrace is designed to be GDPR compliant, which is a European privacy standard that is actually much more stringent than just about anything that we typically see here in North America. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, great question, Michael.
All right, Shannon, what else do you got for us?
Great. So all these little bubbles here, right? We can see those different user interactions below. And then I'm just gonna kind of show you how this was the one that was causing the problem, right? They're trying to submit their credit card information and pay for this trip to Paris for their grandma's 90th birthday, and they're not able to do so, right? So if I go in and perform some waterfall analysis here, I can actually link this directly back to the trace. So when I'm looking at this, right, it's cool to see, you have all this front end interaction stuff. You have how is my app performing? Maybe you have some user sessions that are failing or frustrating, and then we're just linking it right to the back end, right? So I'm able to see here exactly where in the trace this failed and kind of go in and resolve this issue. This particular one is an array out of bounds exception. So, again, I just wanted to show you guys kind of the full
Oh,
picture of,
oh, hold on for a second,
I
Shannon,
know, going through a lot. I know.
because I got to ask you this. Um, so at no point did we have to like did you actually do a query? Did you go in and actually say, "Hey, let's look up this trace ID, this W3C trace ID," and then try to figure out, where the span or the trace was on the back end side that was linked to that particular user action, that user's request? Did you have to search for any of that?
No.
You literally you just click the button twice and then you go
Jonesy loves to drop the mic, and I love it. Like, yes, that's
you,
awesome.
you literally go from here's what the user saw on their screen, here's what they did, and here's what happened on the back end. And at no point did I have to go fill out in a search field, hey, find me this that might be related to this. It's just all there.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Exactly. So that's literally what we did. We went from a user session, we looked at what did that user do, and then we broke it down into individual actions and then linked it right back to the trace. Boom. Mic drop.
Wow.
I love that. And Paulina, I'll send you some information on the app deck scoring as well. It's a universal standard for scoring applications. So we'll have our Dynatrace team send you some information on that as well. But yeah,
Okay.
this is again just kind of we're here for this.
Hey, okay, so we got 12 minutes now. We got 12 minutes
Yeah.
now. What else do you got for us?
Man, Jonesy, you could keep me talking all day. I love this. So again, we're kind of looking at the tracing here. We looked at some of the exceptions, and we know what caused this problem and how we linked it back to the front end. And I want to end on something that's a little newer to Dynatrace, right? So everybody's doing a lot with generative AI, and Dynatrace is no exception to that, right? We're using Davis Copilot to basically help make query writing. You just don't need to know how to do it. So I can pass in text and it'll write a query for me on the back end and pull information for me. Jonesy, you probably have more up-to-date information than I do on Copilot, but just want to set the stage for kind of a fun flair thing we're going to do here.
Absolutely. While you're doing this, let's explain. What do we mean by Davis Copilot?
Mm-hmm.
So Davis Copilot is essentially Dynatrace's sort of first foray into leveraging like a large language model to essentially, the way I describe it is this. I describe it as this is how we democratize access to observability data, right? Because in the past, it's always been the realm of the folks that are sitting on top of your, that sitting on top of your Cassandra or your Elastic or your Prometheus. And now, because Dynatrace actually takes all of your metrics and all of your logs and all of your traces and has it residing in the exact same data store, and we've got this really powerful query language called DQL to access that information, this large language model just makes it super easy for somebody to just ask a question. So go ahead, ask it a question.
Yeah, so we were just working with the Easy Travel application, our demo environment today. So I'm just going to say, hey, pull some error logs for Easy Travel. Easy, right? And I've already pulled some stuff below as well, looking at problems and then summarizing them, right? So I didn't have to write a line of DQL to pull this information. I passed in text, right? Human text, and it's going to pass back information for us, right? So this is really, really cool. And I've been testing it for this demo and with customers now. And there's a lot of different use cases with this, right? We can take this and use a workflow to kind of get information and do automation with this. We can make it easy for business users to come in and find information in the system. So there's, the bounds are limitless when it comes to Davis Copilot and generative AI in general. Uh, so yeah, it's a super cool feature, and just wanted to kind of show you guys what we can do with it.
It's funny because when I was, Shannon, I mentioned earlier that I was at this Red Hat Ansible Automates conference this morning, and the way I described it to the audience is that we're at a super interesting inflection point in the industry. We've been talking about self-healing for years.
Yes.
And now what you're seeing is this combination of events that are occurring at the exact same time. You have this, push on the observability side, to make this data accessible. And we're not talking about, simple monitoring like we did a decade ago. Is the app up or is the app down? Now we have multiple streams of information that are coming in about our application. Now that we have that, you combine that with, for example, our causal AI that just gives you an answer when it detects a problem. And then when it comes to querying this data, being able to use this Davis Copilot to just ask it a very simple question and have it generate the DQL to give you that response, and then be able to perhaps parameterize that response, then include it within a workflow and have it trigger a JavaScript to go out and do some other component of work. This is really exciting times that we're living in, folks. And the best thing about it is you don't have to spend all of the time setting up all of the different sources of data. All you have to do is just access Dynatrace, all of this data in our Grail data lakehouse. You access it through the Davis Copilot questioning, and you're just going to get answers. So we're just at a super exciting time where we can do all sorts of really, really interesting things.
Definitely. So if you have a fun use case for us, we'd love to work with you and build out some sort of automation around it. We're just, again, we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg here with what we can do with this. And I just did a couple more queries on the fly to show you guys. Literally, you can summarize, you can have it do graphs. Like it's just amazing what you could do with this right out of the box. So go in, if you're a Dynatrace customer, turn this on and start playing with it. We'd love to hear your feedback.
And everything about this notebook functionality that Shannon is showing us is so exciting. It allows you to do this exploratory type querying of your information. But you can also, if, for example, the data that you pull back, if it happens to be something like a time series, then you can apply what we call the Davis analyzers to it. One of the analyzers is a forecast. And that forecast basically allows us to predict where the result is going to be within a certain period of time based upon the historical view. So this Davis analyzer and these forecasts here, these allow us to actually start to project out. So imagine the scenario of automation that you can drive here. Basically, I want to go look for a specific metric that's associated with something that I can act on. Let's say a disk filling up as a perfect example. So now what I can do is I can apply a forecast to my disk, whatever my disk utilization metric is. I can apply a forecast to it. And if I see it get to a point, trigger a workflow that executes an Ansible script to resize that disk. And in that particular case, prevent the problem from even happening. It's really powerful. We
Oh,
just, like, honestly, we live in a world. I'm convinced we are living in a world of science fiction now, where things that we had talked about for years we can actually now do.
yeah, no, it's
Super exciting.
awesome, Jonesy. And I think we're at time, at least for my demo, and we covered a lot today, right? So we covered what is the one agent, how does it, how does it differentiate us in industry, front end monitoring, and how is that out of the box with one agent? How do we link the tracing into all those user interactions? And then we even did a little co-pilot. So we've kind of done an around the world tour today, Jonesy.
You sure did, Shannon. Shannon, you know what? Thank you so much for joining us today and running us through this demo. It was a lot of fun. We had great questions as always. As always, we had great questions, and that's what makes these sessions so fun and so powerful. So, folks, we're gonna wrap it up here. This is what we do at Get to Know Dynatrace. If you've not tried Dynatrace and it's your first exposure, by all means, take it for a free spin. You can go to www.dynatrace.com, click on the free trial. It's not going to do anything goofy like ask you for a credit card or anything like that. You can get access to a Dynatrace instance for a couple of weeks, and you'll have access to almost all of the capabilities that we showed you here today. So this has been a great session. Shannon, thank you again. And folks, we'll see you again next time on Get to Know Dynatrace.